We are on a journey, and we're just getting started. When you think about going on a journey, when you think about going on a road trip, the reason is typically the destination, right? Like you're going somewhere. Very few times do you ever just get in your car just to go and spend some good quality windshield time. That may be your thing, I don't know. But if it's not, typically you are leaving to go somewhere. So there's the destination. So when we talk about the Hub City Church journey, where are we going? The question that comes to mind is, where are we headed? Like, where are we going? If we're going to take this trip with you, inevitably, when I start talking to people who, I'm going to be real open this morning and just real candid about how this process happens, because when it's all said and done, I don't want to have planted a church by myself. I spoke something to our district superintendent Thursday night that I don't even know that I've told my lead team this. So they're finding out when you find out. I said, Pastor Wilburn, my heart is for Hub City Church to launch another church within 5 years. That's my heart. My heart is not to get this thing where we've got it, we made it, we can sustain ourselves, we can survive. That's like the immediate need. Let's just see if we can keep this thing alive. My heart, though, is for Hub City Church to send out a church plan in 5 years. So I said that to say this. I don't want to keep it a secret how we do this, because in 5 years, you may be on a team of people who goes and launches another, especially if you live some distance from here at all, I would love to send out a team of people to the community that you live in. And you may be on that launch team. And so you need to take good notes right now, because we may be sending you as a church plant here within the decade. That's scary. That's tough. But we don't want to keep this thing a secret. And so when we talk about Hub City Church being on a journey, the natural question is, where are we going? What's it going to look like? How's it going to sound? What's it going to look like? What are Sundays going to be? What are Wednesdays going to be? What are midweek stuff going to be? What are microchurches going to be? And the challenge here, so as a church, as we make that question, where are we going? If you were my kids, I would tell you something like, you'll find out when we get there. Right? But you're not my kids, so I won't say that to you. But I will say we'll talk about that more in a couple of weeks. We're not going to necessarily talk about that today. Because more importantly than where we're going, I want to pay attention to where we're at. Because the challenge for us right now is to be present where we're at on the journey. Because it's easy to come and say, in 5 years we're going to plant a church. And do nothing for 5 years. And then get to the 5-year mark and go, well, why didn't we plant a church? We talked about it. We put it on the calendar. We marked a community that we were going to put it in. Why didn't it happen? Because we never paid attention to the place we were at. And so we have to be present where we're at on this journey. And the challenge and the tension for a church plant is managing the where we're at with the where we're going. Because we've got a lot of good ideas, and we've talked to many of you about these are some visions that God has placed in our heart, and these are some things that we want to do. These are the where we're going kind of things. These are the ministries and the stuff that we want to be birthed out of here. This is where we're going. But we cannot talk about that so incessantly that we neglect the fact that there's a spot we're at right now. And these two don't connect unless I concern myself with where I'm at right now. There's a tendency to do this personally as well. Because many of you have said, as I have said, things will be different when fill in the blank. Here is my classic, this is, let me let you into Justin and Krista's world right here. This is the conversation. Next month, things won't be quite as busy. We are dumb. Because we've been making that statement for months now. For years now. We've been saying next week, next month, things won't be as crazy, and we will fill in the blank. Guess what? Never happens. Next week is always as busy as this week. Next month is always as busy as this month. There is always going to be things to do. But we do that all the time, right? Things will be different when fill in the blank. Things will be easier when I will be more generous when I have a better job. I will be more consistent when I'm out of college. It'll be easier when we're married instead of this thing that we're at right now. There's always this thing that you can point to and say, things will be different when. Here's the reality of the situation. If I'm not doing things now, things aren't going to change when things change. If I'm not taking care of where I'm at right now, nothing will change in whatever season of life I come into. If I'm a bad steward of money, I will be a bad steward of money when I have kids, or when I get married, or when I get a different job, or when I get a better job. That is not going to change. If I'm a bad steward of my time, that's not going to change when I change whatever. Fill in the blank. Things, if I'm not doing them now, will not change when the situation is different. And so we're managing this tension of where we're at and where we're going. Now, there are some things that we're not quite ready for as a church. You know, and we have conversations, and there's this kind of like, well, why aren't we doing this? Well, we don't have the resources of the people to do that. And I'm not going to halfway do it until we do. Like, there are just a few things that we can't put into place yet. But at the same time, I've got to not give myself too much freedom that I create an excuse of why I don't do anything. You see the tension I'm talking about? Like, I have to be realistic with the resources we have, with the people I have. Yeah, we could do something every night of the week, but by the end of a month, I won't have anybody left. Y'all will all be gone. Yeah, you're like, I've been there. Y'all will all be gone. Like, that dude wants all of my time, and I'm not giving. We have to be realistic with that, but at the same time, I can't create this excuse to where I don't do anything because we don't have enough. Because we will never have enough, right? Our vision will always be bigger than our resources. Today, tomorrow, 10 years from now, our vision, if we're doing this right, will be bigger than our resources. But at the same time, I've got to be realistic with what I've got and then start working with it. Y'all with me this morning? We're going to get somewhere. So the challenge is for us to be present where we're at on the journey. And sometimes we want to rush past where we're at and assume the next phase or the next season is where the real fruit will come from. But I'm telling you something, it will have to happen right now. Because the reality is, if we're not doing things now, we won't do them when the situation changes. The scale may change, how it looks may change, how our abilities may change, but the heart behind what we do, the heart behind what you do, will not change. When you have more money, you will still be as generous as you are right now. When you have more resources, you will still be as mission-minded as you are today. And if it doesn't mean enough today for me to sacrifice, it won't mean enough tomorrow for me to sacrifice for it. Because the heart behind what we do will not change. And so it's not the stuff, it's not the doing, it is the heart. In other words, the process is more important than the product. At Hub City Church, the process is more important than the product. The people are more important than the brand. Okay, because we can make stickers and we can make signs and we can put them on every car and every sidewalk. We can line this place with billboards. But at the end of the day, the process is more important than the product. The being is more important than the doing. In your life, the being is more important than the doing. The who you are is more important than the what you do. Because we are a culture that will define ourselves by what we do. I am a pastor, and I am a football player, or I am a musician, or I am whatever you do for a living. We define ourselves, but who you are is more important than the what you do. Somebody say amen to that. Amen. If you look at our website, if you look at the hcc.guide, by the way, all these notes are right there. You can give online there. Everything you could need to get connected to this church right there, hcc.guide. Our values are listed there. And if you look at the way they're laid out, our values are representations of what we want not to do. They don't say that we value going out on the sidewalks and loving people and waving signs at them or whatever. Our values are what we want to be. They say that we're committed to Scripture. Our values say that we want to be a culture of honor, that we believe the best about people, that we speak the best about people, that we want to be radically generous, that we want to give of our time and our resources and our money. It says that we want to be excellent in how we do things. That's hard when you're a church plant. Because guess what? I think we've got a couple folks watching the live stream right now, and it is garbage. Because I've got fiber taste on a cable modem budget. You understand what I'm saying? It's the tension, I'm telling you. And so we desire, our heart is to be excellent, but we're fighting that. That's our values. We value teamwork. Build your team. If I've said it once, I've said it 17 times to our people. Build your team because we value teamwork. I want this church to be, once we get launched and get going, I want to be so that any single person can leave and not ever come back and things still keep happening. Do I want people to leave and never come back? Most of the time, no. Let's not be absolute in our statements, but most of the time, no. But I want it to be so that if I'm gone on a Sunday, that nobody ever slacks up. Y'all remember that one Sunday right before Easter that I just left? Tyler was like, I hate you still. And I just left because I was missing a belt and I had to go find it. And you needed me to have a belt on that day. And I left about 12 minutes before service started to go to my house, which is 15 minutes away. And I almost got back in time. I'm so sorry, Harris. But we're going to build a team. Constantly build a team. You should be building a team so that at any given moment you can step back and start working on something else, and that keeps happening. Because how we're going to build ministry here is we build people that can do ministry. The process is more important than the product. So here's 3 things I want to give you real quick as we're talking about what we want to be as Hub City Church. So before we tell you how we got here, before we tell you where we're going, I want you to be very well aware of what we want to be. Because that's the most important thing. And when I talk about us as a church, here's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about us as a leadership team. I'm talking about us as a launch team. I'm talking about you who you've never been here before and it's your very first time. This is what I want us to be. This is what I think God has called us to be. Number 1, I want to be a disciple that makes disciples. I want to be someone who is pouring life into somebody else. I want to be a guy who doesn't just give a sermon on Sundays, but is actively helping someone figure out how to live more like Jesus. We want to be. It is God's desire that you be a disciple that makes disciples. Can I tell you something? There is no attendance requirement for us to make disciples. We don't have to be 100 strong for us to make disciples. We don't have to have fiber internet to make disciples. We don't have to have all the latest stuff and the gadgets and the gizmos to make disciples. God has called us to be disciples that make disciples. We don't have to have a certain income to make disciples. In other words, making disciples is not situationally dependent right now. It's not resource dependent. It's not attendance dependent. It's not talent dependent. It's our primary focus right now. We want to be disciples that make disciples. If we don't make disciples now, we won't make disciples then. If we're not making disciples now, we won't make them when we move to the Mule Barn. We won't make them when we launch another campus. We won't make them when we plant another church. We must be disciples that make disciples. Have I said that enough yet? Do you want me to move on? I'm probably going to say it again. Here we go. In your life, contextualize this. Make disciples. We're not going to create a Sunday school class for you to make disciples. If your goal is for this church to look like the church that you grew up in so that you can make disciples just like that, it's probably not going to happen. Contextualize this to your life. Make disciples. When you're in your sphere of influence, make disciples. When you're with people who don't necessarily believe the exact same way you do, pour life into them, make disciples. Teach people how to love Jesus more than anything else. That's becoming a disciple. This is why we do microchurch. Because we want to connect people together who can help disciple one another, who can walk through life together. Because I believe that a church-built church is better than a pastor-built church. Let's say that again for the folk in the back. I believe a church-built church is better than a pastor-built church. Because we could create this thing where the pastor gets up and he preaches you a mediocre sermon on Sunday, right? And then I tell you my vision, I tell you what we're doing, and then I give you all tasks and give you all assignments, say, all right, go make disciples and go reach the lost and go bring somebody to church and do all the things that you know to do. And I could take my vision and try to push it through each one of you, kind of like a giant Ponzi scheme. I'll sit up at the top and I'll just have all my people that go and do the things so that my vision can come to pass. Or we can turn that thing upside down and I can stand on the very bottom and I can equip more people to do what God has called them to do, instead of trying to convince them to do what God has called me to do. See, God called me to make ministers. God called me to disciple leaders. He didn't call me to go win everybody at your workplace. He called you to win the people at your workplace. He didn't call me to show up at your job on Monday and tell them about Jesus. He called you to do it. He called me to disciple leaders. He called me to, I've got to make some decisions every now and then, and so we do that. But it is not my desire to tell everybody what to do. It's my desire to ask people, what has God called you to do? And let's do everything in our power to empower you to do what God has called you to do. Not for you to do what God has called me to do. Does that make sense? Are we getting it? Let's be a disciple-making church. Let's be disciples that make disciples. Number 2, I want to be people who make the goodness of Jesus unavoidable. I want to be the representation of Christ where I'm at. The Bible calls this Christ's ambassadors, right? That we're the representatives of Jesus. And somehow, so many of us spend so much time griping and complaining and whining. How could anybody see Jesus through us? Fact? I think it's fact. I think I'm accurate there. But I am the representation of Jesus. It is my desire to make the goodness of Jesus unavoidable. That's a cute tagline, something we say around here all the time. But our goal here, I want you to hear this because we're just talking about what we are. Our goal here is not to be a big church. Our goal is not for Hub City Church to be the fad church. Okay? That's not why we're here. We are called and our goal is to be a church that fills Hattiesburg with disciples. Period. I've said it like this when talking to pastor friends of mine. I want it to be hard to go to hell from Hattiesburg. I want Hattiesburg to be a city that Satan just hates for people to show up in. I want it to be hard to go to Dollar General without running into someone, not that has a Hub City Church shirt on and has a sticker on their window, but I want it to be hard to go to Dollar General without running into someone who is in love with Jesus, and it just radiates from them. My heart is to fill Hattiesburg with disciples who are in love with Jesus and who actively show up every day on purpose to make the goodness of Jesus unavoidable to the people they run into. I think that's the calling of God. I think that's what God has called you to do and what He's called me to do. Regardless of what church you go to, if you're a disciple of Jesus, this is your job to make His presence and His goodness unavoidable where you're at. I'm not talking about being obnoxious because there's a difference, right? God didn't call you to be obnoxious, but He did call you to be effective. He did call you to love people. He did call you to give them the benefit of the doubt rather than assuming and jumping to conclusions about their motives. I want to be a church that makes the goodness of Jesus unavoidable. We're not trying to fill Hattiesburg with Hub City stickers. We're trying to make His goodness unavoidable. We're trying to fill it with His presence. And like it or not, the church is the expression, it's what we talked about last week, is the expression of God's character in these last days. Jesus left, and He said, but guess what, guys? I'm going to empower you, and you're going to be the church. And He said, and guess what? The gates of hell won't prevail against it because you are the church. We're the tool that He's using. We're going to make the goodness of Jesus unavoidable. Are you still with me? I'm bringing this thing to a close, guys. Hang in there. Somebody smile at me. It's going to be all right. So we're going to be people that make disciples. We're going to be disciples that make disciples. We're going to be people that make the goodness of Jesus unavoidable. And here's the last thing I want to tell you. We're going to be people who do hard things. If you are looking for an easy church experience, let me save you some time. This is not the one. That's hard. That right there is what's going to keep us from seeing as significant growth as what we could early on. Okay? Because let me tell you something. It's easy to build an easy church experience that people will easily show up to and easily check the box and then easily go home on Sunday to pacify their minds and their spirits. I come to church and it's easy and I write the check and it's easy and I go home and I leave it there. Like I take my church jacket off and I put it under my seat and I'll be back next week to get it. This isn't that church. Sorry. Actually, probably not. Not sorry. This isn't that church. We will be a people, a church that does hard things. And if you don't like doing hard things, we're probably not going to mesh well. If you need a church recliner, we probably won't mesh well. If you need a spiritual elevator, find another place. We're going to take the stairs. Feel the Spirit of God here this morning. God's about to build something in this place. God is going to build something in this city, and it's not going to come through a hand-me-down. It's not going to come through some kind of spiritual welfare check from the Holy Spirit. It's going to come from a people who say, I am down for it. I'm here for the work. I'm here to get my hands dirty in messy situations. I'm here to get involved with situations that make me uncomfortable, with people that don't look like me and don't sound like me and don't act like me and don't smell like me. I am here to do hard things. We're going to set lofty goals, and we're going to fail. Why? Because I'd rather fail doing something hard than succeed doing something easy every single day of the week. I don't want to get to heaven and have my pristine church shirt on and say, Lord, look how I made it. I want to barely make it in with my knees scraped up and my holes in my jeans and go, God, I gave everything I had while I was there. I gave it all. I gave my time. I gave my talents. I gave my resources. I gave it all because I was willing to do something hard to see the kingdom of God advance. There is too much at stake for you to take it easy. There's too much at stake. There are too many people who are lost right now for us to coast on through and be satisfied with, well, we gathered 30 this week. We will do hard things. At some point, I'm going to make you uncomfortable because we're going to take risks. Hang in there, leadership team. At some point, you're going to get mad at us because we bit off more than we can chew. Hang in there about 2 months. You're going to see it come to fruition. I say that jokingly, but it's real. We are going to go after things that are beyond our resources. Why? It's called faith. And it's this drive that I've got inside of me that we must do hard things. We can do the same easy things that everyone else does, and we'll get the same easy results everybody else has got. We will do hard things. I need to close this morning. Tyler, if you'll come help me here. So in case you need to be reminded, here's what being a part of Hub City Church really looks like. It means that you're going to be a disciple that makes disciples. You say, well, I can't right now. I'm not concerned with you're good at it right now. Just know that's where we're going. So that's what we're working on. See, you had to master it. I'm still working on it. I'm still learning to be a disciple that makes disciples. Sometimes you got to focus on the disciple before you just focus on the, does that make sense? We're going to be people that make the goodness of Jesus unavoidable. We're going to show up to restaurants and smile at people. And we're going to treat them like they have a soul. And at the end of the meal, we're not going to tell them we did it because we want them to come to Hub City Church. We're going to do it and we're going to walk away, and we did it because we love people. This world is sick of churches that transact kindness for attendance. That I will bless you and I will be nice to you as long as you are part of my crew. I refuse to live and die with a mentality that trades someone's attendance for my kindness. We will be people who are just sweet people. Heard a statement this week pastor in our organization who is absolutely killing it. Pastors a church down in Florida, Radiant Church, Aaron Burke. He said, people don't want a friendly church. They want friends at church.
That's right.
There's a difference there. And hey, glad you're here. Glad you came. Glad, hey. They want somebody that cares enough to go, hey, how's your kids doing? Saw you guys went on vacation last week. How was it? They don't just want friendly people. They want friends. We must make the goodness of Jesus unavoidable. And we're going to be a people that do hard things. It's called faith. And guess what? I'm inviting you to do those things with us. I'm inviting you to use your gifts at Hub City Church. To let Hub City Church equip you so that you can do what God has called you to do. We are inviting you, and guess what? I'll be real honest with you. We desperately need you to be radically generous in this season at Hub City Church. We're inviting you to do that. We're inviting you to take the resource of time that you have and invest it here. Why? Because we're going to do hard things, and we believe that we're going to see an exponential return on that in the form of souls. We're going to do hard things. So in closing here this morning, here is what I know. It's a bold statement. Here is what I know will make us successful. And this thing will make us successful personally in our relationships, in our homes. This will make us successful in our businesses, in our profession. It'll make us successful in our academics or whatever we're doing. It will make us successful spiritually. Here's the thing that I'm going to tell you this morning. I told you where we're going to be. I'm going to give you a little bit of what we're going to do now. As we're being those things, here's what we're going to do. This is the grand secret of it all. Here's what I want you to take home with you. What is going to make you successful is learning how to search things out. So that sounds odd and weird and simple. And I'm not talking about Googling something. We're going to learn how to search things out. Here's what I mean by this. The Bible says in Proverbs 25, the wisdom of God said this. He said, it is the glory of God to conceal things. He said it is the glory of kings to search things out. Here's what I mean by this. What is going to make you successful professionally, personally, spiritually, what's going to make you successful in raising a family is learning how. What's going to make you royal is learning how to search things out. Because here's what I believe according to this verse. I believe that the glory of God is buried all in your life. And all the things that you discount and say, I'll never be that, I believe it's buried down in there. Because the glory of God is to conceal things. Bury them way down deep. But what makes royalty is people who search them out. A person who doesn't stop digging until they find God at the heart of the matter. And doesn't take everything at face value, but takes it into the presence of God and go, God, what can I learn out of this? What can I take out of this? I believe the glory of God is hidden in so many areas of your life. And learning to search it out will make you a king. It'll make you a queen. I ran across this a couple weeks ago. Well, it was on the 25th. Proverbs 25. And I read this verse. I couldn't tell you what a thing in the whole rest of the chapter said. Because I read this verse and it lit up in my heart. It is the glory of God to conceal things. And it's the glory of kings to search them out. What's going to make the difference in your life is the searching, is the digging stuff out of the presence of God. I want you to stand with us all over this sanctuary. We're about to bring this to a close this morning. Let me just speak some life into somebody. The glory of God is hidden in your life. It's buried down in there. And you may not feel it, and you may not see it, and you may not recognize it, and you may not know it, but I'm going to tell you something. What makes you a king and what makes you a queen is learning how to search it out and dig down in there and find it. As we bring this to a close this morning, here's what I want to tell you. We're going to be the things that we talked about today. But in response to doing, here's the deal. I want you to pay special attention this season to dig some stuff out. Because here's what I'm speaking to this morning. I'm speaking to people who are gifted and they don't even know it. Who are called and they never even realized it. And are anointed to do a work that's going to change the world and they never even found it. But here's what I want you to commit this morning. I want you to commit in your heart and your spirit and say, God, I'm going to do some digging. I'm going to do some searching because I believe that your glory is buried down in this mess somewhere. I hope you feel the Spirit of God here this morning. Just a certain depth here today that I want to give reverence to and allow the Spirit of God to kind of search me a little bit as I kind of come to the bottom of some things and find out what it is God's calling me to do. I want you to bow your heads all over the sanctuary. Close your eyes. We're going to take a moment of worship here in just a moment. But I want to ask a question to you.